Thank you to those that have joined already. We'll just give it 1 or 2 minutes for a few more to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll get started. Welcome to Connect with BMC Helix webinar series. Today's webinar will be on accessing TrueSight Capacity Optimization, that's TSCO for short, data using public APIs. Due to the number of attendees we're actually expecting, we will have all participants that will be muted. However, we do have the Q&A section of Zoom should you have any questions when we play this webinar. And if we have time during the end, we will open up for a live Q&A if you do have any questions.
Hello, and thanks for joining today's session. My name is Manoj Kandial. I'm a Premier Support Architect at BMC Software. In today's webinar, we will be looking at accessing TrueSight Capacity Optimization data using public APIs. Today's agenda is how a user access can be controlled, what are the available API user permissions, how to generate a token and manage it, what are the available public APIs, and how do we use it? User access control. Remedy single sign-on RSSO is used to authenticate users by using various authentication methods like local users, AR, LDAP, Kerberos, SAML, etc. Users and groups will exist in RSSO. In TSCO, you can assign one or more activities to a role, and that role can be associated to an RSSO group. Depends on your requirements. You can also control domain access on TSCO console by creating an access group and selecting only record domains to be accessed, and then associate the access group and RSSO group. Finally, in TSPS, create a role, select record permissions, then add record RSSO groups and TSPS roles to an authorization profile. With this, you can control the user access. API users and permissions. Users who are part of access granted roles only can access the data using API. A TSU administrator must grant the record, read, or write permissions to users for accessing the public APIs. The permission is based on the API read or write activity that the administrator assigns to user roles. Here you can see many read and write permissions. Depends on what data you need to access. For example, read access to data API is to access and view the data. Write access to backend control API, edit the backend controls. Write access to reservation, edit the reservation API, etc. From the given URL, the document, you can find all these details. API user authentication requires a token key. You can generate this key from TSCO console and use it in your API calls. These API calls are authenticated by validating that token. API keys and URI. From the TSCO console, admin can generate an API key for record roles by going into Administration, Users and Roles option. Click on the role for which you would like to generate the key and click Generate API Key option. Here you can choose whether the generated key should have a specific expiration date or without any expiration date. So if the key is generated with a specific expiration date, the key will not be valid after that date. But if a key is generated without any expiration date, that is valid forever. Now, when you generate the key, a file by name credentials.key will be downloaded on your laptop. If you no longer need these keys, or you want to safeguard your environment against unauthorized access, you can revoke all the generated API keys from the TSCO console or from the application server's shell prompt. You can easily get the URI from TSCO admin console's Data Hub status page for the respective API services. Data Hub Components exposes a set of APIs. APIs are implemented using the J2EE technologies provided as RESTful web services. Can access these services using clients implemented in any programming language as long as that supports the HTTP protocol. Let us look into different APIs. Agent Data API is used to analyze real-time and short-term historical data to address any capacity and performance issues in your environment. Prerequisites: you should have TSCO gateway server with TSCO agents must be either in active manager runs or in uncatalogued systems list. You can retrieve list of servers including the metadata for the servers, list available nodes for a specific domain ID, list the metric groups, retrieve the associated set of collected metrics, etc. From the given URL, you can access the document for more information about these API. Using the Agent Registration API, you can add or update gateway server agent lists. There are three parameters available here: agent name, which is a required parameter; agent list name, it's an optional. If not specified, API will use the default list. And third one is a gateway server, which is also an optional parameter. And if not specified, the randomly one of the available gateway server will be used. The backend control API enables you to remotely manage and control the interaction with the backend components of TSCO. For example, you can execute task or ETL and check the execution status, submit the execution report and check the status, activate an ETL. Using the chargeback API, you can retrieve, modify, or delete a chargeback object, like create a new instance of a class, search all instances of a class, retrieve an object by ID, update data about an object by ID, delete an object by ID. Data API enables you to import data from custom source through data formats like time series data and custom structured data. Time series is the format used to transmit data relative to a time series, that is, a series of historical data related to the same measured object. The measured object is identified by entity name, resource name, sub-resource name, and location name. And custom structure format is used to transmit data relative to a custom structure table, that is, a set of rows in a table with custom columns. A custom structure table is identified by table name, column types, and key columns. And the supported file formats are CSV, RS, and XML. You can use the license utility API to generate the license information in the XML and JSON format. Using reservation API, you can create, retrieve, update, delete, and work with the reservations, like retrieve data for an existing reservation along with the alert status information, update an existing reservation and perform the placement, create a new reservation and perform the placement, delete an existing reservation, search for reservations that match query criteria, retrieve the details of a reservation item, update a reservation item. Using the earlier given document URL, you can find a bunch of activities you can do with this API. Search API can be used to search entities and metrics, search tag, build the catalog of tags, update the tag index with the list of items, deletes the catalog of tags entries, rebuilds the indexes. Provides a way to run a time forecast model, executes the forecast model specified in the request and returns the forecast response instance which contains the forecast results. From the earlier given doc, you can find all available time forecast request format parameters to use with this API. Using the ETL configuration APIs, you can export the existing ETL configuration, import the configuration, retrieve the current status of the task, retrieve the list of all ETLs, and other tasks like retrieve all available entity catalogs, retrieve all the available schedulers, retrieve all external data connections, retrieve all available metric profile, and many more. Let's go to demo. Let's begin with the user access control. For the demo purpose, I'm going to use a local user. I've already logged into my RSSO console. Here you can see I logged in as admin. And first we'll go to the local user. So we are on the users and then click on add user, and the login name, username, password, confirm the password, and make sure you enable here and click on add. I'm not adding the user here. I have already created a user TSCO API user and a TSCO API group. But for demo purpose, I'm showing it here. So you can click on add and add the user. Now, once the user is added, go to the groups, click on add group, add the group name and the description here. And here is the tick mark here. Click on save button. That will save the group what you have created now. Now, as for the demo purpose, I have already created a user, TSCO API user, and a group called TSCO API group. Here, the TSCO API group is here, and I'll click on this plus button, assign or remove users here. So we'll click on here and make sure you add the record users to the group. I've already added the TSCO API user here, so you can just select and then say assign and then say done. So this will associate the user you created to the specific group. So now we will go to TSCO console. I have logged into TSCO console as an administrator. You can see here, and now let's go to the administration, users, roles. And here you will add a role, new role. So click on add role and type whatever the role name you want and then give the description. Then this option says, you want to assign this role to specific groups only. So here the external name is nothing but the group you defined in RSSO. In this case, we'll use the TSCO API group. What does this mean? The role what you're creating now will be automatically assigned to the RSSO group defined here. It need not necessarily, it can be assigned to one group. You can assign to more than one group as well. The role can be assigned to more than one group as well. The next one, the bunch of activities are available here. Those are the one which allows the user associated to this role what they can do. So in this case, let's look into the API specific one. So as we saw in earlier slides, there are read access for the APIs and there are write access for the APIs. You can assign whatever the activities to that role. With that, you can click on save. So when you click on save, what happens, these selected or granted activities will be assigned to this role, and that role is associated to the RSSO group. Any user part of that group will get all these privileges. So let's click here, save. Now we'll go to access group. And why do we need an access group? Because not all users want to access every domain from the workspace. So you can restrict if you would prefer that as well. So let's look how you do it. So click on add access group. So let's say you provide a group name, the description, and here again the same thing. You're going to assign to specific group from RSSO. So in this case, we'll do that. And here too, you can assign multiple access group to a single RSSO group. And then click on save. Now you are on this page where this will allow you to select the domains you want to control. So by default, all domains and all reports are assigned. So you can click on edit domain. Let's look that and go here. So it'll list out all the domains, and the default, the all domains are selected. So I can unselect that and can grant only specific domain. So if I click on this, now if I want to granularly assign it, then I can go expand further down and then go at the lower level as well. So that way, the access can be controlled how I want. And then once that is done, click on save, and that completes the activity on the TSCO side for the user. Last part on the presentation server. I logged in as an administrator here. Let's go to administration. Let's go to roles and click on three dots, create a new role here, and enable the privileges you would prefer to assign to this role. And then click on save, and then go to authorization profile. Click on again three dots, click on create, then enter the name here. And two things you need to hear. The first one is a user group. So click on add. This is the user group which you defined in RSSO. You're going to assign that to this profile. So in this case, let's pick this, click on OK. And then the next one, the roles, the one we just now created. So again, click on add, select the role what you defined in the previous step, and then click on OK, and then now click on save. And this completes the user access control for TSCO and TSPS. In order to generate the API key or the token, you need to go to administration, click on users and roles, then select the role name for which you are going to generate the key. For the demo purpose, let us take this TSCO API role. So click on the role, then you will see an option here, generate API key. So click on generate API key. You will see two options. The first option shows the expiration date. It's a specific expiration date. So you can click on that and edit, change the date. Or the other option is no expiration date. If you specify a date, the generated API key will be expire on that specified date. It won't be valid after that. But if you select an option, no expiration date, the key never expires. So let's pick a date here, and then you say generate. When you click on generate, the TSCO will generate a credentials.key file that will be downloaded on your laptop. At any given time, if you need to revoke all generated API keys from the TSCO console, go to administration, users, and roles, and click on Revoke All API Keys. This will prompt you to proceed or cancel. If you proceed, any generated API key will be revoked. Where can I find the URI? From the TSCO console, under Administration System Status, expand the Data Hub. Here you can see many API-related services. If I'm looking for an URI for Agent Data Services, click on API Providers Agent Data Service. Here I can find the URI. The same way, if I'm looking for URI for search services, so click on that and I can find the URI here. Now let us try some API. So let's look into Agent Registration API. So this is the demo environment where my gateway server name is, you can see here. And there are two agent lists listed here. Let's take the first one, named list 1A, and see what agents are there right now. So click on the download gateway server agent list. It's downloaded here. Let's open that. Right now, the agent list 1A has 4 agents listed out. Using the API, let's go ahead and add another agent. For an API client, for the demo purpose, I'm using Postman, and here is my URI. Tells to register the node. Here is the body part, the agent list name, the first one, the list 1A we are picking up, and the new agent we are adding is march2023.bmc.com, and the gateway server also we are specifying because we want to add that agent to this particular agent list onto this particular gateway server. And let's go ahead and run this, and it's executed, it's completed, and we got the response. So now let's go ahead and check whether this new agent is really added into this agent list. So here I'm back on my TSCO console, and let's re-download this list 1A agent list. I'll click here again, and that's now downloaded the new file, and I'm bringing it back into the screen, and now you can see the new agent got added here. For comparison, this is the original list and this is the new list where we got the new agent added from API. Let's try an agent data API to list the metric groups retrieved from the metadata that's stored in TSCO. So again, in the Postman, I have the URI already made available here. So let me put the body part, and there's a post, and let's execute it, and the results are displayed here. Using backend control API, we'll try to execute an ETL task, and then we'll check the status. Then after that, we'll try to run a system task. Then we'll try to check the status as well. So first, let's try an ETL task. For the simple demo purpose, we'll take the ETL, the self-monitoring. We know it did run earlier and it completed successfully. And so what we need is definitely then ETL ID. So let's take, it's a 38. And here in the Postman client, I've already made available the URI, the requested task execution. And so here I did put the task ID 38. So we're going to execute the task ID 38. So let's run it. And it said, yes, the request has been successfully submitted because we just ran the ETL. So it is just submitted, and then it said, okay, means the task submitted successfully. So we have an ID, that task, job ID here. So now we'll check the status of this job based on this job ID. So I just did update the URI, And to check the status, it says check task execution status and ID, which we got it from the earlier submission. And we don't need anything in the body. And we'll end this a get, and we'll run it and see. So the result it says is finished. So that means that ETL task completed successfully. So let's check the task status here. And this is self-monitoring 38. That is what we executed. And let's check the log. And it says it's completed successfully. Now let's take a system task, which we know the component status checker. There is an error here. Previous execution. Task ID, system task ID is 19. So let's run this same task, system task, because the status is error. And if that execution fails, let's see what will be the result of that. So coming back on the Postman, I did modify the URI, and this is a post, and then I did put back the body part here and change the task ID to 19, and let's send it. So here it says everything is fine. The request has been submitted. Okay. So now let's, from the API, check the task execution status. All right. So again, the URI changed it to check task execution status and got the same ID here. Let's run it. And this is failed. So that means the task, the system task 19, what we executed, it did fail. So let's go back and check on TSCO console now. We are back here, the 19, the component status checker, and show log. It did execute, and of course it did fail the error. References. Here is a document URL where you can find more information about public APIs, and a video reference, updating ETL configurations using API, another video reference about extracting data from data mart using API. Quick summary, what we have covered today in this webinar: configured an API user, looked into available API user permissions, generated an API token, went over available public APIs.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope you found this useful. We do have quite a bit of time at the end, so we are looking to open up to live Q&A. I see that we don't have any questions that are in the Q&A at the moment, so if you do have any, we will stay on for a few minutes. I'm just going to unmute everyone to allow everyone to talk if you have any questions. If you don't, then we will close the webinar in a few minutes, and we will be sending out the link which will take you to the YouTube, and we will also send out the presentation slides, and we will be sending out a survey as well. So if you do have any questions, and I think William, you do have one, so if you want to ask away, I have unmuted you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Yep, I presume you can hear me.
We can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So are these APIs accessible outside of the tool? Like if you wanted to incorporate them, say, into a Python script or something? Or is this, do you have to access it from within the TSCO tool?
You can access it from every server you want. As soon as it has access to the database, you can use curl or Python to run a request against the API or to submit a task. It's externally, it's a firewall. It's a data listener which is open for the API calls, and from every other system which is allowed to communicate to the data app, you can run the calls.
Okay, great. No, that's
that
good.
was shown in the presentation. We used Postman, and that Postman was running on the presenter box. It was not running on the data hub.
Okay, great. Thank you.
William, while we have you unmuted, was there any other questions that you had?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. I see we have a question in the Q&A. I can see, Giorgio, you're answering it, but as we've got time, Jim, I don't know if you want to ask it out live. We will obviously answer it as well in the Q&A after, but you had a question around, can you advise if there are specific things we can or cannot do with APIs when we have Helix continuous optimization? I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so
Okay.
obviously we don't have access to the remedy side of things, but it looks like there should be things we can do with Helix continuous optimization. But I wondered if you could shed any light on that before we roll our sleeves up and give it a try.
Okay. Giorgio, do you want to answer that, seeing as you were answering it in the chat?
So normally the functionalities are similar, okay, because the service is running on your specific Helix, which is version 20.02, so your Jim from
That's
Helix. It should be similar. You can check
Excellent.
on the status page, going into the Data Hub section, and
Yes,
you should see the API endpoints available.
Marvelous.
Okay, so your version is basically a lift and shift over pods of what we used to install as a 20.02 on-prem. So we should be
Brilliant. Thanks,
more or less
Giorgio.
there. You're
Super.
welcome.
Any other questions, Jim?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to William. I see that you put a question in the Q&A just saying you do have another question, so I've unmuted you again.
Thank you. I tried to type it and I thought, no, let me just ask it. Yeah, so I'm logged into our implementation and don't see we don't have any, like if I go in, I'm sorry, if I go to the gateway manager and I look at the gateway servers, there, I guess, do you have to, what do you have to do to activate the gateway? Maybe that's the question.
You have to install a gateway manager somewhere and connect it to the TSCO. Most probably you only have the TSCO installed, the application server in ETL engines, and not a gateway server.
Okay.
So the gateway server is the one that is in charge of managing the data collection on capacity agents around the network. So if you do not have capacity agents deployed around, you most probably don't have a gateway server. You don't have that section enabled. It's not mandatory.
Yeah, we're not using the BMC agent, Bill.
Right.
So there's no gateway data.
Okay, so where I'm going, and maybe I'm just off track here completely. If I wanted to, basically, I'm thinking of using an API to access the data from the database. Are we still just writing SQL queries to pull that data?
There is the data API to access data on the database, and it's documented.
Okay. Well, I just need to roll up my sleeves.
Yeah, there is into the documentation. There is between the section using public APIs. There is a section that is called the data API, and this describes how to access time series data or custom structured data or data mart or indicator stuff like that. It's documented.
All right. Would it be possible for somebody to drop the link into the chat?
Ask the question into a question and answer, and I'll give you the link.
Sure.
Thank you. And we'll also put it onto the thank you email that will go out to everyone as well. But yeah, we track all the questions, which allows us to then type a response. That'd be useful. Thank you. Okay. So we don't have any other questions at the moment. I can just see that we've got the doc stuff. Stefan's put that in. Actually, Stefan, that's gone into the panelist stuff. We'll get William to respond, and then we'll put it into the Q&A. But we'll also capture this post-event. Does anyone else? I think I've unmuted everyone now, so you can unmute yourself if you have any questions. We've got a couple more minutes. Otherwise, we can close the call early if anyone doesn't have a question.
That was really fast. Thank you.
With reservations in Helix not being finalized yet and due later this year, will the API's functionality be put in place when reservations goes live?
I think it will be. So I'm not the product manager. We cannot answer, but the guidance is typically provide the API first, then work on the GUI part. So
Okay.
I think it will be, but I cannot speak about the future.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
check
thank you.
with the product manager. We don't have a product manager on here. They tend to do certain webinars with features, and it may be that Stuart, we look at getting a webinar together just for the rest of the audience that is around what's coming in the futures. So we've
Yeah,
only
so
got
it's
technical.
I've been involved in the reservations discussions, and then there was the mention in the Q&A about Helix and
Okay.
functional compatibility. So I was just wondering that they are going to arrive together.
Okay, we'll get that answered again. If you want to just pop that into the chat, and I'll follow that up with the product managers, saving our techies
Yep.
to go and do that, because the product managers, as I said, we have different types of webinar. We have technical ones like what Manoj has presented today, and then we also have the features one. So if it's a requirement, there's quite a lot coming out, then I'll be speaking to the product manager about getting a webinar together. So yeah, if you want to put that in there, and I'll reply back into the Q&A because it all gets pulled down and we go to various resources. Okay. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Okay, I'm going to assume that is the only questions that we've got. So guys, thank you very much for joining. We will capture all of what's come into the Q&A. We have only recorded for internal purposes. I will send you all out a thank you email, which will have the slides. You'll also get the YouTube link because we upload it to our YouTube channel for capacity optimization. And then if there's any other general questions that haven't been answered, feel free to reach out to us and we'll go to various people if we need to go and ask them. And thank you again for attending, and hopefully you get 20 or so minutes back of your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's
very
been
much.
really useful to see this working.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.